Over the past few years, mousepads have completely taken over my basement. I've spent hundreds of euros on them, but just now after reaching for my wallet to spend my hard-earned college loans on yet again some juicy new pads, I had a revelation. Does my mousepad even matter? Or am I just addicted to buying new gear? So I set out to see if the difference performance-wise is notable enough to justify my purchases and my ever-increasing debt. First, we need a way to actually measure performance of a mousepad. For this, we need a setting with the least amount of randomness and the largest impact of mousepads. You're probably not gonna guess this, but we're gonna use an aim trainer. And what better aim trainer to use than AimBeast, my favorite aim trainer of all time, who was even willing to go as far as making this video possible by sponsoring this video, so huge thank you to them and check the link in the description to their Steam page. Alright, so the testing method. I picked 5 different scenarios, each one of them focused on a different aspect of aim as to test each mousepad on a full aiming spectrum. I chose these scenarios for their consistency across all runs for one mousepad, and for their variability in scores across all mousepads, as these are the most reliable for our testing purposes. Then for actual testing, I did 5 runs per scenario per mousepad per sitting. Warming up on that scenario for 10 minutes, then going through all the runs in a randomized order so they all should be about equally affected by my own performance fluctuations. This way we get an average score for each scenario for every mousepad, which will normalize and combine into one final score determining a ranking and the king of all mousepads. These are the mousepads I'll be testing. The Artisan Hien, my favorite mousepad of all time. Very rough texture, which I personally really like. At this point it's around 3 years old with heavy use, so it's lost most of its speed. Desk, for reference. I expect it to perform the worst, but it will give perspective as to how big differences are, and let us know how much a mousepad truly matters. Fnatic Jet, super fast hybrid mousepad. I don't like this one because it just feels too inconsistent and cheap for me, which is also why I included this one. Saturn, an amazing cloth pad sort of similar to the QCK but almost better in every single aspect. The Tray Gun. This is a great Cordura mousepad, probably the most balanced pad in terms of speed out of all the ones tested in this video. And the QCK Heavy. You probably know this one already. This was my second mousepad ever, my first being the QCK Mass. Back then I liked it so much that I had to get the bigger version. I'm also testing this pad twice, acting like they're different mousepads. This way we'll be able to see if their final scores are similar, like they should be as they're the same mousepad. With that out of the way, let's now run through all the tests. In this category there are 2 clear losers. The Desk, followed by the Jet. The Saturn performed exceptionally well, scoring well above all other mousepads. It offers so much control and stability while still being able to make small corrections, and thereby wins this category. The other mousepads were slightly behind the Saturn. The differences here are smaller, but the Desk clearly loses again. The QCK and Jet performed ever so slightly below average, and the Tray Gun takes the crown this time. Here we test pretty much a combination of all aiming aspects. All mousepads performed very similarly here, the Saturn winning by just a small margin. The Desk performed horribly though compared to the others. In this test it's all about smoothness and consistency. Any jitteriness results in poor scores. Here we see the Desk and the Fnatic Jet doing very poorly. The Tray Gun and QCK take up the middle of the leaderboard, and the Hien and the Saturn are on top. This test really emphasizes faster movements and directional changes. Desk did very poorly once again, but this is also the first time we see Saturn taking a spot on the bottom of the leaderboard. The Fnatic Jet and QCK did slightly better, and the Hien and Tray Gun performed best. Now we've done all the measurements, let's look at the overall scores. I calculate an overall rating for each mousepad based on performance relative to the reference, aka the Desk. The Desk will be assigned 200 points for each scenario, and every other mousepad will get those 200 points times its score divided by the Desk score. This results in an overall rating for every mousepad so we can say which one is best and which one is worst. Higher score is better performance. This gives us the following ranking. Number 7. Desk. As expected, the desk performed worst of all, with a fixed score of 1000 points total. It's just not smooth enough whilst having a sticky surface. My mouse sensor also didn't really seem to track as accurately. Number 6. Fanatic Jet. This is the pad I also dislike the most due to its inconsistency and weird glide properties. I do want to say that there is a chance that it's a skill issue on my part, as faster pads do require better mouse control. But we'll have to see in the future if this is also the case with other fast pads. For now though, I think it's just not good performance-wise, as it's significantly worse than the other pads on this list. Luckily at 1086 points, it does beat the desk by a fair amount, and it's more pleasant to use as well due to its lack of stickiness. Number 5. QCK Heavy. To be honest, it did perform a lot better than I expected, scoring 1117 points, putting the Fanatic Jet to shame. It mainly gives you a ton of stability, but thereby restricts your movement a bit. Number 4. QCK Heavy Control. The control was only 1 point off of a score of more than 1000 points, which does give me a bit of confidence about my testing method. We'll talk about the reliability of these results later. Number 3. Tray Gun. It scored slightly better than the QCK at 1121 points. The tray gun seemed to do extraordinarily well with fast movements, but didn't do as good when precision was involved. Number 2. Artisan Hien. My favorite mousepad of all time did quite well. I would be interested though to see how it would stack up against the new Hien, as mine did develop a pretty gnarly slow spot. Still, I'm glad to see it did fairly well. This also seemed to be the most well-rounded pad of all. And then number 1, the Saturn. It didn't do as well in reactive tracking, but it dominated nearly every other category. It's easy to be precise with and offers lots of stability. This is pretty much exactly what you'd want from a mousepad for tactical shooters. Our top pad scored 1129 points. Now, does this mean the Saturn is actually a better mousepad than the Hien? There are a couple things to take into account when looking at these results. There are 2 things that cause variability in the results. Scenario randomness, often referred to as RNG, and my individual performance, which also isn't consistent, unfortunately. Fuck. Because of this, we'll have to do some statistical analysis to know how certain we are that one mousepad is actually better than another, instead of just having a higher score due to chance, as I could have just been more lucky with the Saturn as opposed to the Fanatic Jet, right? So I determined a margin of error for every final score. See the document in the description if you're interested in all the measurements and calculations. This range gives us about a 90% probability that were we to test the same mousepad again, it would fall somewhere in that range. If the lower bound of one mousepad is higher than the actual score of another, we can say that mousepad is actually better with a reasonable amount of confidence. This shows us that the Saturn is a better mousepad than the QCK, but these tests were not enough to show that it's actually better than the Hien. Now we measure the reliability of my tests, there are other factors to keep into account. These tests have shown that for me personally, the Saturn is a better mousepad than the Jet. I expect it to give an indication that the Saturn is generally a better mousepad, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will perform better with the Saturn. Every person will prefer different mousepads as everyone aims differently. So just take these results as an indication, as I personally can't measure how much these results would vary from person to person. In these tests I measured the QCK double the amount in order to have a control. The QCK also performed better than I personally expected. It could definitely have been the case that, as I used it more often in these tests, the results of the QCK were inflated as I got more used to this pad than all the others. Something this test does not take into account is how used I am to a certain mousepad. The desk scores significantly worse than all other mousepads, but that doesn't prove that if I were to train on my desk for a couple months, I wouldn't be able to perform just as well as on my Saturn. There's no real way for me to test this though, but I think the difference is big enough to say that it's definitely preferred to at least use an actual mousepad. So this is an overview of all tested mousepads. There's absolutely no doubt about the fact that mousepads do matter. Especially going from nothing to something makes a big impact. It also seems that having a mousepad that decently fits you and one that you like will have a measurable positive impact on your performance. At some point though, it just becomes preference, where your performance variability far exceeds the impact the Switch and mousepads will make. We see some mousepads performing better at certain tasks. For example, even though the Hien scored slightly worse overall than the Saturn, it seems to be the preferred option for reactive type tracking, which would be more suited for games like Quake or Overwatch. Anyway, hope to see you in a Mr. Arena.